Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At Home with Holmes. Thank you, Maddie, for those hand gestures. And for you, the audience, joining us here today, this evening, morning, night, wherever you are. And so, as you know, we are housekeepers. And so we have some housekeeping before we get into this episode.
If you want to know, because you all do and have been asking, the secret to our intellect and our handsome good looks, there are 3 things you have to do. 1, touch nature. 2, consume good product. 3, wear good product. And how you can do this, and in this order, you start by going to Cabin on the Coulee, cotc.ca.
Where you can touch some grass.
Touch some grass, get into some nature. This is time to rejuvenate your soul. Our family does this once a year. It is rated #1 farm stay in Canada, according to TripAdvisor. And so go to cotc.ca, and this is where you can go to these central Alberta glam sites with your family.
Yeah, it is between May to November, and people are already booking vacations, so guys, make sure to book in advance. And if you go on that website, you'll see that you have the selection between the cabin, which holds 6 guests, 3 bedrooms, and 4 beds. You also have the Coulee Yurt, which holds 5 guests, 3 bedrooms, 3 beds. And then last but not least, the Grouse House, which holds 4 guests, 1 bedroom, and 2 beds. All the photos are online, and the cabin and the Grouse House are pet-friendly. The Coulee Yurt is not. But again, go to cotc.ca to check those guys out, and then you can go to their Substack, Cabin on the Coulee Farm, to get updates on the family and the business and any updates. And if you scroll down, you'll see, oh, these 2 lovely people, or 3 lovely people. You'll see the owner of the business, Eric, interviewing me and Maddie when we were at Cornerstone. And if you hadn't noticed those beautiful garments that we are wearing,
you can buy a beautiful garment on our Buy Me a Coffee. This is step 2. You can buy us a matcha on the homepage, because that's how you be healthy. This is the second thing you need to do to get our intellect. And if on the far right, you can see shop. That's how you get the 3rd and final step, which is beautiful garments, the Alberta jerseys.
And what is it that Jordan Peterson says? He says you got to dress up like you actually care about yourself. Mm-hmm. And not only do we dress like we care about ourselves, but you and us, we all can dress like we care about our nation, which we do. I am not joking about that. I'm just having fun.
And you can buy more than one if you want to spread the love to family members. Makes good gifts. When you buy it, it'll do a little pop-up message for you to send me your size, so I know what to send you.
Yep. So again, if you want to achieve our lovely intellect and handsomeness, then check out Cabin on the Coulee Farm, buy me a coffee, aka matcha, and support us by shopping for a jersey and support Alberta that way. So thank you guys for listening to our little segment, and without further ado, we can get on with the episode.
Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of At Home with Holmes. And today we have our first time Tommy Carrigan from the Tommy Carrigan podcast. We are super excited for that. As you can see, he's one of the younger guests that we've had on. But he
can relate, though. Let's be real.
No, he can totally relate. People will. I don't think they'd be able to guess his age looking at him or hearing him, because he's definitely, young of mind, which is a good thing. It makes him for a very good podcast host. But one of the reasons we're having him on is because he's a podcast that our clan frequently goes to, because he is so authentic in how he talks to his guests, the question that he asks. He's somebody that actively on the podcast, I can count not on 2 hands how many times he's gone, shit, I didn't know that. Verbatim that word. So our recent series, when we've been doing the changing axioms, he's a very good example, because he goes out of his way to talk to people because he doesn't know. And he's like, I'm a pleb, I'm a dumb nut. Can you just explain it to me?
Like dumb
I'm
it down.
And it's an energy that a lot of people can relate to. He has a whole wide range of guests precisely because he has this just authenticity of wanting to gain knowledge and wanting to change his axioms so he can update himself. And so that's one of the biggest reasons that we are very drawn to him, because it pulls and invites something out of the guests that not all podcasts do, because some podcast hosts have different agendas, or they want to know about, they gatekeep the kind of conversations. Tommy does not gatekeep one thing on the face of the planet. So this is a very, very good podcast to go and get open source knowledge, especially because he doesn't put anything behind a paywall. So another reason why he's somebody that is great to support. And we are super excited to have him on. Dad?
Yeah, so we are very, very honored to have you with us. We have mirror neurons and brain work is important for us, and having individuals that can go out of their way to show the world not only the humility of what they don't know, because there's a Socratic dialogue in the Cratylus where Socrates says there is no greater deception than self-deception, because the deceiver is always home. And one of the difficult things that a lot of people do, and that we find, especially with what we're dealing with in Alberta with an independence movement, and there's all sorts of different axioms and where people have their positions on life, you have been a stalwart example of not allowing yourself to fall into that trap. And even though you've had biases, because we're very familiar as listeners of you, so we have hundreds of hours of your mind and your perspective over the years. And what is an honor for us is to be able to have you on the show to share a bit of that story, but also it's inspiring for people when they realize that, like, podcasters like Madison had aforementioned, if they decide to do the Noam Chomsky manufacturing consent and they put up the two barriers, then all of a sudden your mind can stay in sort of this very trapped place of stasis. And we think you're one of the best examples. You are held in high honor and high regard around our household. We want to also be able to tell the world, even though we're a smaller podcast, that we want to be able to look you in the screen face and say thank you. Thank you for being that, and thank you for doing that. We don't always agree with everything your guests say, just like you don't always agree with everything your guests say, but we love to listen, and we like our minds being changed and adapted. So the first question that we have for you is the journey, your axioms, where you started and how you looked at the world and how you felt that it was framed, and some of the things along the journey, not just for life, but also within guests in your podcast, that you can share with us, that where you found yourself changing your mind, having to look and go, I thought one way about the world, and now I need to think another way, because where I was on the map was incomplete.
I would definitely say, like, humility. I haven't been checked by God yet, and I'm sure I will. My mindset that hard work can solve almost anything, just brute force it. Like, I mean, like in high school, I was can I swear?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't know.
That's okay. You do you.
No, but you can't do it before me, so fuck yeah.
There you go.
Right.
Done.
You're good.
MayCee's our F-bomber.
I'll just leave now. No, but like in high school, like I was a dipshit, and like all I did was just like lift weights. And like when I got to college, I remember it was literally like my first day of my sophomore year. I just decided, I was like, it was like a hold my beer. I was like, I think I'm going to be a doctor. My friends are like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I was like, okay, I was literally sitting in the frat house, like with a bong. And I was like, no, I think I need to stop doing all this. And I was like, okay. And then I went to like the library the next day. And like a week later, they're like, I mean, Carrigan's kind of, why is he doing that? And like a month went by, and then a semester, and then 3 years. And everyone was like, what was that? Like, like something in my brain just snapped. And I was like, I'm just going to be a doctor. And I just took the brute force method and applied it to like memorizing. And if you're smarter, you can do it a lot easier. But for me, I was like, okay, well then there's no really limitation. If I can go from my specialty is like push-ups to I can master organic chemistry, then I'm like, okay. I'd say, and then that applied to the podcast has been the same thing. So in that sense, I haven't changed my mind on hard work does it. I'm more than open to the fact that I'm gonna have my mind changed. Honestly, I think the thing that I've changed my mind the most of in my entire life was just looking at people who, and it's going to sound extremely superficial, looking at people who like gained weight or didn't restructure their lives. I just looked at it as weak. I would just get angry at it, and I was a psychopath. Like I was maintained like 5% body fat for like 5 years. Like, and I can say, after I lost my brother to suicide and I put on almost 70 pounds, only in the last year have I been able to get rid of about 60 of it. And I was trying for 12 years. You gain some, you'd lose some. You gain some, you lose some. That has been the most difficult thing it is so beyond insanely difficult, and kind of like the deceivers at home, that I look back on people I would just get angry with, and I was like, oh dude, it fucks with you. You don't have any confidence. And again, I know this sounds superficial, but my point is maybe it's not, because some things you can brute force. Other things you can brute force as hard as you want, and you can just keep slipping and falling for years, for a decade. So I don't know. I guess some things I look at as like maybe nothing anymore. Like I don't view anyone's personal flaws as weakness. It can be. It doesn't mean it's not out of the realm of possibility. But I do have a lot more, I don't know, kind of like fear of God instilled empathy for people, and I don't always show it, but I think I see that a lot now. When I see someone trying to do something, anything at all, I have a lot more of like an open heart for it, because I was able to brute force med school. I was able to brute force a podcast. So I'm like, brute force works for everything. And it did not work for that. I don't even know how it eventually happened. It just, I just stopped fucking up one time. So I know that sounds like super like weight loss, but like, no, that has been more difficult than acing the MCAT.
That's honestly one of the things I love about your podcast, is because of your. My dad always likes to say this quote, because he worked on the rigs for 17 years. So he's like, I'm a metal meets the meat kind of guy. And this podcast for us is a side project. We clean houses, we work full time. And so the real world is not lost on us. And because you starting with and having your connection to your body and working out, taking care of it, even the metaphors you use when you're understanding some of the things that guests are saying, you will allude, you're like, yeah, that's actually how a bicep builds up or breaks down. And you talk about, you go to the physical body. And I love that understanding, because people, when they start doing research or get into the realm of academia, they lose the real world. They start to let their body atrophy. And that's something that our family definitely does not believe in. Lots of us go to the gym, work out, maintain, we eat healthy and stuff like that. So your journey and that connection to your body translating into your mind, it is very healthy. It's something that I know even a lot of young men because going to the gym, there is a lot of young men going. There are even some old timers. They are not the kind of people that I know watch podcasts necessarily, or if they do, it might be.
Oh, like David Goggins.
David Goggins.
Yeah. So it's like they might do that, but otherwise they don't. But you're somebody that would really appeal to the young man because of that connection.
Well, what I'm interested in, though, is like, now to trail on this, is kind of like, you started the podcast, and something that, now that we're just talking about, I guess, young men or just young people in general, when it comes to the culture that we have, which is, there is a sort of influencer generation and all that, and then they look and they're like, oh, I'm gonna try and get myself in shape and all of that, and unfortunately they'll go towards like steroids or Botox, and those are super toxic for you and it's not very natural. But like the whole, I guess, facade of taking care of themselves versus actually taking care of themselves. Your journey with that, with your mind, because what's interesting is you have a podcast. What's interesting is you ask the questions, you go and actively seek for knowledge of peers that are technically like above you in experience and also in age. And like, that's something that I guess our generation does not really, it was the psyop of never trust anyone over 30. And so I'm like, you didn't fall for that clearly. And so I'm just wondering, like, why in your own value structure have you even decided to get seeking out the knowledge and the questions and wanting to know more about the world around you in the way that you have been?
Again, it might be like a form of hubris, but to like, I still don't. I've been working out for 25 years. I still can't name more than like 6 muscles. Like I don't, because it never mattered to me. I don't need to know the name of it. It's, you do this, it does that, right? It's like it's, and you can see people obsess or all about it. It's like, well, your trapezius dorsal. I'm like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like I know it is pretty, like, if you eat a lot of protein and lift weights till it hurts. Like it is that, and even getting into med school, and I know people always hate how much I cite it, but it was like an influential aspect of my life. Was once I stopped going to class, once I stopped literally stopped going to campus and just started focusing on it in my room, is when I started getting straight A's. Is when I just stopped listening. I was just like, because if you go there, there's this whole, you immediately you're initiated into the think this way, and then you read the in basic stuff. You read the chapter, and then you do the questions at the end, and you go to class and do the PowerPoints. And it's like, if the end goal is to do well in the class, which is a numerical grade, get there however you... Actually, Dale, the Delta Force guy, the youngest ever member of Delta Force, he was like, when we were in like training, they brought us out into this like field, and there's like a 20-foot tall square fence, like wrapped in razor wire and concertina wire. Inside was like, I don't know, something, I don't know, like like a ball. And they were like, go get the ball. And they're like, how do we do it, sir? Like, what's the protocol? And finally they were like, I'm not telling you. Figure out how to get the ball. And they were like, oh shit. And like, I guess they ended up like tunneling or something. Or I think even that didn't work because they tunneled down and like the fence went below. So I think somebody like knocked over a tree and like cracked the fence, and they just went in and got it. And they were like, there you go. Yeah. Go. That's the end goal. And so I always looked at it as like, the goal isn't to go to campus or like go to like study rooms, or I'm like, that's not the goal. The goal is to get the grade.
Right.
And I was like, well, how much time are you wasting walking to class? How much time are you wasted in between classes on campus? How much time, when you could just be like memorizing it? And then seeing that and it worked, I was like, okay, so it's not always whatever they're telling you how to achieve it. And so, I mean, starting the podcast, like as it would go on, I would just find, if I didn't put myself in like a container, like I'm going to interview criminal experts, or I'm going to interview this, or I'm going to interview that. If instead I was just like, my end goal is, I like when the conversation leaves and I just go, that was kind of fun. Like that was it. That was really it. Like sitting on like planes growing up, or in like the sauna at the gym. I never talked to anybody because I needed to. You just start shooting the shit, and you kind of, I don't know, it's like a puzzle. You see how quickly you can get people to start. Next thing you know, you're like 5 minutes in, and this guy's telling you about, Korean War like experiences, and you're like, that was fucking awesome. And so I guess when I look at like podcasts now, people are like, you don't have questions, or you don't have a set structure. I am doing this the same way I've interacted with humans my whole life. And if at any point in my life I'd sat next to someone on a plane and pulled out questions, they would be like, what the fuck are you? Best case, you're a Fed. Worst case, you're a serial killer. Like, what is this? And I guess that's how I try to go about it, is like,
don't look like a Fed. Don't look like a serial killer.
That's the advice of the podcast, yeah.
But how would I talk to someone if there was no camera? Like, before, I had no idea of like when you guys were going to start recording it. Like, it doesn't matter to me, because on and off is the same thing as who I am. And so it's a roundabout way to answer your question. But so for me, it's, if the end goal is to like have an enjoyable experience with someone, you're not going to get caught up on like, or hung up on, well, I don't want to sound ignorant and ask about this or that or this or that, or don't say this, that's stupid. You're like, yeah, I'm like, what is, Dale, what's the difference between like a clip and a magazine? And he'd be like, what? And I'm like, what is it? And he'd be like, oh, it's this. And you're like, oh, okay, cool, thanks. Like, it's just, you're like, talking to like Dr. Malone, you're like, well, how come this one worked and this one didn't? And he's like, well, we just did this test. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I don't know what any of this shit means. Like, even basic stuff, like in the middle of a conversation, I'll just be completely unrelated. Like Ian Burlingame would be talking something, and I'll be like, what does antecedent mean? And he'd be like, what? I'd be like, it's, and I'm like, I'm kind of retarded in that if I see a word I don't understand, I will not look it up until I need to. And I'm not kidding when I hand on my heart. I will go 20 years without knowing what it meant if I didn't need to know what it meant. And then one day I'll be like, oh, there it is in a sentence. Like, yeah, I guess I gotta. And at any point in my life, I could Google it. But you just drop all humility. You're just asking questions. And if somebody has an issue with you asking rudimentary questions, fuck that person. Like, then the conversation has already, it's not been enjoyable. If I'm at a point where I'm like, hey, what's this? And they're like, you don't know that. And in my mind, I'm like, all right, so I don't know if that answers your question at all, but it's just the end goal. What is get in the fence and get the ball? For me, the end goal is like, yeah, man, I kind of just want to have a good conversation. And good can be anything. It can be emotional and heartfelt. It can be a hilarious story. It can be like, that's the darkest thing I've ever heard. That's the scariest thing I've ever heard. That's the most confusing thing I've ever heard.
Well, you said that it's like the end goal is to have good conversations. And to me, what's interesting is when people ask me and Maddie, like, what's your podcast about? Like, we can relatively give an answer. We're like, oh, okay, like, we'll touch on anything and everything. We'll say if it has to do with, I don't know, culture or just geopolitics, local politics, understanding people, just behaviorism, whatever, like we'll talk about it. And so I guess that kind of be my question is like, when people ask you what is your podcast about, how do you typically answer that?
Dude, there is no, it hasn't changed at all. It's like, oh, it runs like an hour. It's pre-recorded. I do it over Zoom. I can take it down if you want. And yeah, it's anything and everything. They'll be like, but broad strokes, what is it? And I'll be like, all right. So a literal Apollo astronauts to like my retarded friends doing RFK Jr. impressions and everything in between. like the most like, you know, published molecular biologist in world history. And I had a guy on that, like, I don't know, he had a company where they use like laser cleaners and printing on beer cans. And like, why did I do that? Because I saw like a YouTube short. I'm like, that looks fucking crazy. Have you ever seen those, like the lasers that like clean rust?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
I had a guy that did that. Why did I do that? Because it was kind of interesting. He just, some random dude, he's like a small company in like the middle of like Kentucky. Yeah. It's like, why do you want to talk about this? I'm like, kind of seems cool. And he's like, it is kind of cool. And I was like, yeah.
It's like, it appeals to my tism, man. It appeals to my tism.
That was like, that's one time I was trying to get on a guest, an author, and I didn't realize I was on Audible, and I accidentally looked up the narrated by name instead of the author. And I like got in touch with him. He's like, I'd love to do this show, blah blah blah. And, like, he comes on, and get ready, and like we're talking beforehand. I'm like, oh, I loved your book. And he was like, which one? And I was like, oh, you know what, you know, XYZ. And he's like, oh yeah, no, I narrate a ton. And I was like, wait, you're not the author? And he was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. And I was like, do you want to do the show? And he was like, yeah. And we just shot the shit for like 2 hours about narrating. I thought that was bad. It was just like, that's got to be interesting. What is it like reading at home? He had like a booth in his home of like sound panels and shit. I'm like, do you get fucked up when you do that? He's like, you really gotta be careful because it is an audiobook and they can hear you slurring words. I was like, that's a good point. But so it's like, what is your show about? Like, I don't know, man. It runs an hour. It's pre-recorded. If you want me to take it down, and I don't know, like, what is your show about? I'm like, it's a show. It's consumable media. Like, shut the fuck up. Like,
it's this is the way you get actual information. No, it's very relatable because me and MayCee, last year in the municipal election, we started interviewing some municipal candidates, but there were some people saying, yeah, so you can interview so-and-so and so-and-so and so-so. I went, no. I'm interviewing, and me and MayCee chose people we were interested in. If we weren't interested, I'm sorry, we're not your to know your political candidate.
I don't want to interview a fucking bureaucrat trainee. That's just like when they shake your hand, they can't look you in the eye, and then they smile and they're looking somewhere else, and you're like, bruh, you're not a real person.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna. People email like, we have a guest available for you. I'm like, oh, cool. And they're like, you can ask them about, and I will respond to them.
Exactly, right? Gatekeeping.
You can ask them about. I'm like, there is some. I'm not gonna ask you what your home address is. You know, like I'm not gonna. No. Yeah, like, I'm not an idiot. Like something that would get you punched in the face at a bar. Just stay within those boundaries. Does this result in a father figure pulling a gun on you? Like, then don't do it on camera either. Like,
right? No, that's
don't just, you know, like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like,
the consistency factor. It's something you alluded to earlier, which our dad also grew up saying. You know, you said the same person. I'm the same person on screen, off screen, and our dad always said that on the rigs, one of the things he would notice is that, you know, men, they would go home, be with their wives, their children. That was one man. But then on the rig, working the job, they were another. And he said, no, you got to be the same man on the rigs, off the rigs, because that authenticity, that's honesty. And authenticity and truth does have its own resonance. And people can feel when you are thwarting or omitting something. They can feel. That's how you know a politician in training and a bureaucrat, because something feels sketchy about them, and they're not hitting the right chords. And so that's one thing that we learned too, and we try to also bring to our podcast, is just this: we don't sell to people the podcast. If people want it, it's like, it's there, you can find it, pick whatever platform you want. We don't care, because the point is not to get a certain politician on our podcast or to get a specific agenda across. We want to have good conversations and teach people how to ask good questions and think a bit more critically. And also, we're a family, and that's another thing. People don't usually see this really tight-knit family in a white Western family anyway. So, and we're not like Hutterites or Amish, and people are like, what? You're just like an urban North American white family of 7? Yes, the answer is just straight up yes. So that's another thing trying to bring in is that camaraderie aspect, that you can still disagree but negotiate. I was curious about, because you alluded to the loss of your brother, and MayCee said we've been listening to a couple of stories of different siblings that have lost their brother, sister, and then their life kind of takes a shift. Like they start adopting or manifesting all of the dreams and goals that their now past sibling wanted. They start taking it on as if it's their own thing. Did you notice, I mean, from your family dynamic, was it your brother, your mom and dad, your grandparents? Did you find yourself taking or adopting any traits from them, whether it was after he passed or before, or even your parents? Do you have a dynamic like that that also encourages your thinking?
No, the effect it had on me was, so I was kind of going through like my own like by the time I had, aced the MCAT and got into med schools, around the time I was starting to realize, like, I don't know if I'm happy. I don't know if is this what I want to do, or is this something I think I should do? Because if it's you think you should do it, hey, checks all the boxes. You're gonna be a white coat, Dr. Carrigan, member of society, good pay, family man. You're like, all right, cool, but is this what you want to do? I remember it was like the first week of my last semester, and I was so drunk, and I was so high after the bar, and I was just like scrolling Reddit or something, and I just saw a quote that it was Maya Angelou, and I can still see it in my mind's eye. There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story. And I just stared at it, and I was like, fuck. Like, because I had been trying to like rationalize with myself. At the time, I was like an atheist, and I was like, well, I don't know, like next life go around. And it's like, by the time you're like making that like, what are you doing? What do you mean there might be a next life? I don't know. What the hell do I know? By the time you're making like that compromise, like, well, maybe after this life, it's like, what are you doing? And so it was like, okay, I was already kind of having an existential crisis, a voluntary one. I'm not happy doing X. I'm still kind of at the, beginning of my adult life. What can I do? It's scary to not do this, but I also have this confidence that if I'm able to do this, I can probably figure out something else. And then a couple months later, like 1-2 punch, lost my brother. And it was less about it being suicide, although that's influenced me greatly. The original way I looked at it, and the way I still kind of look at it, is it was a death. And of course, you got to unpack the suicide and blah, blah, blah. You can go down a zillion miles that way. But I also just looked at it as like, I was 23, he was 27. Like, that could have just as easily been a car crash. You could just as easily have your life snuffed out. Like, oh, you can just die.
Right.
And it was this, I don't want to be a doctor, mixed with this cockiness of like, okay, I got in, I got this percentile score, followed by like, oh man, this thing might just poof, end. And then I went down just several years of like drug abuse and weight gain. Like, so I can't say like that was good, but ultimately I will say at the very core of it was good, because I just didn't care. Like, what? Oh, you're 25 and you're moving home. You're 27, you're at home. You're 29 and moving home. Oh, you don't have a family. Oh, do you have a job? Oh, don't you have none of those, like, I guess, peer pressure things. Some might call it pride and standards, but like, it didn't mean anything to me. I was like when you've gone to your sibling's funeral, you don't care if it's like, dude, most of the guys you knew in college all have kids now. You're like, I'm so on planet 9. Like, I'm just not in this universe in a bad way. But it also completely liberates you. You're like, well, then what do I want to do? And so my goal was, I want to be my own boss and enjoy what I do. Because I guess you could be your own boss and not enjoy what you do, and you can enjoy what you do and not be your own boss. But I was like, if I'm not going to enjoy what I do, then I'm going to go be a doctor and at least make a fuck ton of money and help people. If I'm going to be miserable every day, like, I'm going to at least have a high standard of misery. And so for me, the entire thing has been like, if at any point I reach an impasse where I no longer enjoy the podcast, then I'll go be a doctor and make literally 20 times the salary. Like, and so that's honestly what it all comes back to, is like, if I'm not going to do that, I'm going to make sure I enjoy every second of it. And then there's secondary and tertiary and quaternary effects off that. But that's what it comes down to.
Now,
Like,
I have a follow-up question to that, because you alluded to in high school, you get shit-faced. Do you still do that? Do you do the drinking? Do you do the drugs, the whatever? Or did you put that down? And if you did put that down, why? If it's like, because the way you're kind of talking, it's like, and I heard this I was listening to, I shouldn't have listened to it. I could only get through 30 minutes, but it was a feminist roundtable. And this young lady was like, life is all about enjoying myself. So she said, I don't want kids because then I have to be accountable for my actions. She's like, I have a dog and that's enough. But she said, my goal in life is just to enjoy myself. Now, she was young, like 23, but knowing enough of your podcast, I know that's not just what you mean. Why did you not just continue gaining weight? Why did you try and lose that? Why did you stop doing that? Why did you find or decide to no longer be an atheist? What was that journey and why?
In a weird way, it was kind of personal enjoyment. Like in college, I would go to bed early, I'd diet, I'd go out to the bar like once a semester, and I was just hyper focused on getting into med school. After my brother died, like, I wasn't in school, I wasn't taking classes, like, my parents were supporting me. You always hear people joke like, well, man, if I found out I had a year to live, I'd drink every day, I'd eat McDonald's, and like, I did that like nonstop for like 3 years. And it was subjectively the most unenjoyable. It was fun for like the first day. And I don't just mean like unenjoyable in that like those you love are hurting watching you. I mean, like, even more selfishly, it's not as fun. You don't feel good. You're always hungover. You don't feel good being out of shape and out of breath. Starting the podcast, it was back to like first principles. Like, well, if the guest isn't really talkative, I got to make sure I have something to talk about, which means I can't be cranky, which means I got to get a full night's sleep. All right. And which means I probably got to start going to the gym again, because that's why I worked out in college. It had nothing to do with sports. It just woke me up more. Like, I literally was just more awake so I could study. I got into meditation, not for some grander scheme, because it just lessened the internal chatter so I could study longer. For me, over the years, like, getting back into like a militant routine, it's actually subjectively more enjoyable to me. It's there's something about pursuing a goal. There's something about trying to master it in every mechanism, not just like get guests, like have on better guests, like research their book more than anyone else has, and also be funny, and also be, blah, blah, blah. That has been more subjectively enjoyable. And in terms of like alcohol and weed, and I love those things dearly, but I stopped all of that like 2.5 years ago, and it really wasn't my own. I had a concussion, and something got messed up to where I was just having weekly panic attacks. And if I drank alcohol, it would make it so bad.
Increase
and
the
some
anxiety.
people are like, well, yeah, if you drink 8 days in a row, I'm like, no. I'll have like 3 beers, and the next day legitimately like go to the ER because I'm like panting and sweating and like hysterical. I finally stopped fighting against it and was like, for whatever reason, God, the universe, the divine, it wants that thing out of my life, and I don't know why, and it sucks because it was really fun to do on a Friday, but it just like, it's not supposed to be there anymore. Since that's gone away, its life has just kind of gotten better, and I've found that the things that are most enjoyable is when you find out like you genuinely helped somebody. I looked at how fucked I was after my brother died, and just how much it meant to have like a friend that kind of stayed with you. Not even like the most bare bones of like they still text you back. That I like it, that alone can like keep you from jumping off the edge. In like a psychopathic sense, it's deeply selfish because it's just some neuron feedback cycle that feels good. But there's something really cool about when you do something and it helps someone out, and you're like, that person is maybe a little less fucked because of what I did. That's why I changed or not. I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question at all. That's like as best of a understanding as I have. Like,
yeah, no, that answers the question. I'd kind of like to jump in as someone that's been a really long time listener of your story. So somewhere along the lines, there was like Tommy pre-COVID, then what was going on with COVID, because your sense of community seemed like it got, and this is just me as a listener, someone who's sitting on the outside who doesn't know, I can't judge your heart. I can only listen to how you know, there's the biblical verse is like, oh, the overflow of one's mouth is heart comes out of their mouth. There is a sense of community for you. There's some things that you've shown that you have passion about, like with ARC, which we'll allude to and share a little later, for the children that are being rescued. And somewhere there's that, when you said that doing something good for somebody. And it would seem that the pre-COVID Tommy, and then when you started to like look at the awareness of what was going on with jabs, the doctors that you were having on, your sense of the big bad, you got a little more articulate about it than you did prior, even though you did all sorts of literature reading, and it showed that you had an understanding of this oligarchical structure that was out there. But there's, from my perspective as a listener of your show, it seemed like you wanted to start fighting back. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, and even that is like mixed in with just like testosterone and pride. It was like, I want to do the right thing. And there was also this, and it's bad, but there was also, just from the very beginning, there was just this huge idea of like, am I going to get bullied by a guy that looks and sounds and has the name like Anthony Fauci? Like, it was, and it's that's not like a good reasoning, but I was always like,
I accept this.
If I was in college and like that guy was at like my frat house and was telling me how to do, I'd put his head through a fucking wall. Like, and so on a very deep level, it was just pure ego. But there was also the fact that I really did go into that whole thing with, again, my life was still so I was working at a liquor store, living above my parents' garage. There was no grand scheme of like free speech. I was just doing the podcast, and it really was like a curiosity. I was like, why is everyone like so frothing at the mouth about this? At the very core of it was like a curiosity. And so I just got like a doctor to come on the show. Literally like just a physician from somewhere, and he was talking about it, and I was like, all right, well, maybe that'll that'll finish it. And like the comments were crazy, like Facebook messages I was getting and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, and to me, I guess I naively looked at it the way I looked at like the science I know and love in college. Like, there's a right answer and a wrong answer. This is an opinion. Art you can interpret it in different ways. There is like a physics problem has an answer. There's no, well, what do you feel about the answer? It's like, right? And like, I get there's wiggle room, and it's how dangerous is a drug versus how many lives is it save. Like, but as I just kind of kept going up the chain of command, if you will, I was just trying to find like more and more accomplished doctors, and then I liked who had like longer and longer careers beneath their belt and more publications. And none of them were like hysterical. They were like, listen, it's rushed. You got to be aware of that. But at the same time, like, we don't really know what this thing is. Was this a bio? Like, it was all very, honestly, the conversations were fucking boring as shit. But I was like, well, that's it then. There's like a physics equation. It's not sexy. You're like, and here's why the answer is this. You're like, okay. And just the feedback was so rabid from both sides of like, you tell them why we don't need to get this fucking shot. It's microchipped. And I'm like, I don't know if it's that. And like, then other people would be like, you need to take this shot now or you're going to fucking die. And I'm like, I don't think it's that either. And then it was also kind of, and then it's the whole ego thing of people being like, you should take the shot and like, you should be ashamed. You should be banned from YouTube. And I'd be like, okay, you faggot, shut the fuck up. Like, I'll say whatever I want. Like, the earth is flat. Like, fuck off. Like, and it was just like, then it was like the whole ego thing. So it was just this cocktail of everything. But finally getting up to like meeting Dr. Malone and having him on, and it's like, there's the guy with the mRNA. Like, I went all the way up the supply chain to the guy that invented it. And this was July 2021. And he was like, we don't know what it does long term. If you're younger, maybe don't take the risk. If you're older, maybe you should consider it. That was the answer. And then YouTube was like, this is hate speech. You need to take this down. I was like, what the fuck? I'll try to like thread the needle. So I had on Dr. McCullough, who's the most published cardiorenal physician in world history. He was like, there are hard issues with younger men. Older people, you might want to consider it as an acceptable risk. And I got another strike, and I was like, I was like, what can people do outside of the vaccine? And Dr. McCullough was like, and he didn't even say ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. He was like, go to your CVS or Walmart. You want to go for like vitamin D and zinc. And I like literally I cut that out of an episode and I just uploaded that. And I was like, guys, regardless of your thoughts, here are some things you can do for those you love. Third strike, your account's terminated. And I was like, okay, now it's forget the whole ego thing. It's right. Hold on. Like it is now, there is no negotiating because I thought it was the guy with all the credentials. Then I thought it was the published guy. But now you're kicking me off for saying go and get vitamins at the local, which made me realize, number one, nothing I ever was going to do was going to appease them. Number two, man, there is you don't have to be crazy. If you're honest with yourself, you're like, okay, there are forces at play.
Yeah.
You can't take vitamin D.
You hit that third consequence too, right? So it's like that would imply enemy action, like from a military standpoint.
And you're like, you're looking back at the episodes you do with these, and you're like, you're double checking. You're like, you are Dr. Robert Malone. You are Dr. Peter McCullough. And they're like, here are the things. And you're like,
I didn't get the narrator on again, did I?
But then they'll have you tell, and then I'm like, when I had on Dr. Malone, I was like, I'm so grateful to have you. Mind you, this is months before he or Dr. McCullough went on Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dude, thank you so much for coming on my show. Like, I don't like, thank you. And he was like, well, I'm just happy to get on a show. Like, no one will have me on. And I was like, what? I'm doing this thing from like a closet. What do you mean? You can't. It's like, no one will even respond to me. And I was like, why are you doing my show? He's like, well, I'd like to get the word out to a younger crowd. And I was like, you have to be very honest with yourself. And you're like, something's fucked. And then it turns into like the whole, well, why is this falling in my lap? Why me? And then it's the whole, your personal arc with God or the universe or whatever. Like, and you can try to negotiate your way out of it. You're like, maybe I just won't do like COVID things. But you said about like the man on the rig and off the rig. To me, I was like, if I start withholding episodes and only putting them on Rumble, that means I'm also going to very soon start withholding words. Okay, make sure you just don't say COVID at all. Okay. Well, now that you're putting up these guardrails in your mind, even if you don't tell the guest beforehand, if you're doing a show about laser cleaners, you have made the neuron wiring of there are rails that, and not the accepted ones. Don't ask someone about their sex life or their personal, basic manners.
But the panopticon.
But once you start putting that up, you're like, you have now made an acceptance. And then you get a little cookie as a response. You go, and then I won't be banned. Oh, and now there's a positive feedback cycle.
Right.
And then if you have to be very honest with yourself and go, that's the banality of evil. I'm just doing my part. And so it was all of these things tied up in like, all right. And then it went all the way back to like, well, now I'm going to be doing interviews and like having to play this weird hopscotch of saying certain words and not. This all sounds like a job I don't want to do.
Right.
Fuck all this. I'll go reapply to med school.
Right.
So it was a confluence of things. And then what really starts getting you is then you start interviewing vaccine injured people.
Ooh.
Younger than you in wheelchairs or who are talking through voice boxes. And you're like, okay, this isn't some abstract thing.
No.
This isn't your grandparents being told Lucky Strikes are healthy. This is happening in real time. And they're talking to you and they can barely talk. Like their mouth is like drooling and they're like, thank you for like getting the word out. Like I tried to talk about it and all my friends like laughed. And you're like, okay. And then it's a whole, you can be an atheist, you can be whatever. At a certain point, you have to look at everything and go, objective good, objective bad. And then you have the credentialed guys with the patents, and they're going, it's not right that we can't talk about this. And you're looking back in history for precedents, and the only one you can find is the fucking Nuremberg trials. And you're like, God damn it. Like, it really is like, I don't know, I feel like Cartman and South Park, like, God damn it, Butters. Like, it was just like, all right, I guess we're doing the COVID thing. So that's like what it was, is none of it was intentional, but you do reach a point where you're like, oh.
Yeah,
like,
the world happened to you. Yeah, that's one thing that sometimes we talk about. Because even our family, it was COVID that was our third strike, and we went, whoa, okay, something's going on. When you talk about the positive feedback loop and just the there's a book, Ordinary Men, and it's on the snowballing effect of when you start putting up just those little guardrails in your mind. And that's very significant because some people, I don't hear that alluded to often, but especially for young people, you can literally change your neuronal pathways. And that's something when people that go through addiction or they've come off of it, they know this because they know, okay, I've had to literally take whatever habit I had and I have to redirect the hormones and the neural pathways to associate it with something else. And that's tough. But people that necessarily, it's the quieter vices, the ones that are words. So, the way you start talking about things, those tiny little guardrails about what you should and should not do, then that eventually expands to you don't like to have conversations because you don't want to offend anybody anymore. So then political and religious conversations, they just go away. We've had people like, I just don't talk about those things. It's like, okay, so you are already on this snowball journey. You're in the middle of this neuronal pathway. But people don't think about that necessarily as an addiction. So they don't think they have to undo it. And it's the same thing, for losing weight for some people. It's like they don't look at it like a drug, but you do have to. It's just like thinking. And that's why there's such a big connection between the way your mind and the way the body both build and, the eccentric and the decentric. You have to tear it. It just like healing. And this is another thing. When you have an injury, your body gets inflamed. But the funny thing about working out is that you are intentionally tearing a muscle so it can rebuild stronger. So either way, you are building new neuronal pathways and there's going to be inflammation either way. So that saying of choose your hard, it really is like that is the case. And so when you describe things as you just realize that you enjoyed these things, it's the way that you were looking at it, because it's not like losing weight is necessarily easy, but because you associated the end goal, just like you did with your degree, you went, well, I want to get the knowledge. And clearly it's not the way that they're teaching me to do it, but this is the goal. And so because you valued that, and same with the end goal of losing the weight, because you associated that with enjoyment, the journey, which can be construed and you can fixate on the journey as difficult, that kind of just, it wasn't as valuable as what you wanted in the end. And so that enjoyment, and that is rebuilding a neuronal pathway. So you've clearly done that with many things in your life, both your body and your mind. And that is something that people should start considering. And that's why we advocate for people knowing their brains, because people don't necessarily compare the body to the brain the way that you do, but they have the same mechanisms, and it's the same difficulty to try and get there. You're pointing out a lot of different patterns that you've gone through in your life that we witness people go through on a regular basis, especially the young people, and they have these neuronal pathways that they just don't know, they don't understand. Life is just happening to them, and they're going to get caught off guard like you did. And our job, as we've kind of described, is to try and get those answers, because when there's so much more life than there is you, and you get the rug pulled from under you, you can go one of two ways. Some people get too overwhelmed by it, then they go down a dark road, or they start looking at people as a plague and they panic. And we want to avoid that by getting some of the knowledge so we can help people on the other side, because we don't get to pick when people wake up. That third strike, people have different thresholds of what they can tolerate and what hurts for them. And so we're trying to understand that third strike is not the same for everybody. And so we have to just keep our hands open all the time to catch whomever is falling out of the net that the oligarch has created.
Yeah, and in terms of like drop everything on paper of like what feels good, of like partying, sex, food, right, versus like what do you think even like video, like me and my buddy are playing this like World War I video game, and it's like, and I learned a lot of lessons through video games. Always involve killing people, which never comes across right, but like we're playing this game where it's like I'm doing the sniper class and I'm unlocking like tiers of sniper rifles, and it's like they get better with better range and more damage, and we've only been playing this game for less than a week. But I found this in a million different games. Like I unlocked the third rifle after the second one, and I was using it. Well, you should use it. It's the best one. It's gold and it has the whatever. But after a while, I'm like, this is not the other one shoots faster, and it's not as accurate. But just don't shoot that. And like even something like that, we go, that one's better. Now this is done on an inconsequential $5 video game. Well, you have to extrapolate that. If you're in your own life, and you're like, Man, I don't like going out on a Friday night. And it's easy to say it now, but even in college, and there's peer pressure when you're literally living in a frat house and you're like 20 years old and you're like, on paper, I should be doing this. It's not like it's a long stretch of like, well, you have to have that available. It's like, no. Beyond my locked door, 9 feet from me, are 200 sorority girls in my house. They've come, like, I don't even have to leave. And you go, there's something about waking up early and hitting the gym. It's just like, and it's not like a moral thing or an ethical thing. Again, subjectively, like the tickling of neurons. I'm like, alcohol's like, I'm not against it. I'm like, leaving the gym like wide awake and the sun's rising and you're like, man, this is awesome. And when you have straight A's and you're no longer in the back of your mind like, fuck, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing with my life? Like, when you remove those things, you come to your own thesis. You're like, I kind of like going to bed early and waking up. You know, you get mocked for it and whatever. But like, so even with the podcast is in general, like, yes, it's the right thing to do, to not censor, to blah, blah, blah. But it also gets to this idea of like, it's a lot more enjoyable when you don't have these little guardrails. And I heard it attributed to Winnie the Pooh, but somebody said it wasn't. But it's, if you tell the truth, you don't even remember anything. And I'm like, aside from the fact that like the truth is good, the fact that like you guys could have been recording as soon as we started talking and like it doesn't matter to me because it's just like, yeah, that's the way. It's not like, oh shit, that wasn't Tommy. You guys gotta, start the show and now this is Tommy. Regardless of it being the right thing for others, ethically, morally, societally, in the eyes of God, whatever. It is subjectively a more enjoyable experience in this subjective reality that we call existence to just be riding it more smoothly. And whatever that entails, I don't know. That's kind of how it's been for me. I don't feel good when I'm like lying or censoring. It's not, there's no edginess of, I'm going to say faggot just to say. You're like, no, you're quoting like South Park. You're like, it's more enjoyable. Like the ride is smoother. There's less bumps in the road. You ever been on like a shitty back road and then you notice the second you get onto like a newly paved road, you're like,
yeah, you can hear the vehicle sigh of relief.
You're like, oh, like that's how I look at it. Man, I enjoy being like a healthy body weight. Man, I kind of enjoy not being like hungover. Man, I don't make as much money, but I don't have to go and no one's my boss. Nobody texts me and says, where are you? If a guest ever texts me and says, where are you? Fuck off. Like, what do you mean, where am I?
I'm so glad we didn't text them that.
No. But if somebody's like, we're doing today, you're like, no, we're not. No. And the fact that to me, like, I don't have to think twice about it. I'm like, yeah, I'm just not doing that. I'm just taking a week off. So to answer your question, like there is, and I don't think it's an accident. I would imagine that's probably woven into the universe of like, yeah, when you do good, you feel good. And, if you're at the end of your life and, you started a bunch of fake wars, you're like Dick Cheney, there's like 5 million dead people on your soul. Like, I would imagine those final years are a bit terrifying. When you start looking at like, you're like, how sure am I there's no God? You got to start like being really honest with yourself. Like, I don't know.
It is not a coincidence that, a lot of, because even there are things that, and I get this because even on our journey, I didn't necessarily know why I started listening to podcasts entirely. It was a very vague idea of, I think if I have more knowledge, maybe I can help people answer more questions, because people want to know things in life. And I also, as a way to connect with the family, because they started listening to podcasts, I thought, okay, so I'm mirroring people that I admire. But I didn't have a justifiable reason that I could tell people this is why I started when I did. I'd had faith that eventually there would be value in it, I think. And, that's largely what faith is just, being committed to something, being loyal to an idea or hope. But even things like health, I didn't necessarily know why I started working out because I was really young and it's not like mom needed me to be lifting anything heavy at work because, I still had my brother and my dad, but I thought maybe this will be good for me. And then as I've gone down the health journey, simple facts like, oh, by the way, men, when they have a healthy body weight, their kids literally come out healthier. The sperm is healthier and then you have a healthier kid. I went, what? weight actually equates to the health of your child. Not something I would have imagined. I just thought, some people when they work out, they want to do it for vain reasons, but you don't understand the downstream consequences that are actually good and positive. Even things like alcohol, finding out later, and this was the biggest thing when I read 1984, there's so many allusions to dreams, and they talk about losing their memory. And then I learned, some people say, just don't drink alcohol because, or don't drink it just while you're pregnant because it's not good for the kid, but any other time. And I was like, okay, that's kind of inconsistent. That doesn't totally make sense to me. And then I read some more studies on the brain and sleep, and alcohol gets rid of your REM sleep. And I was like, wait a minute. REM sleep is the one that you can take REM sleep away from a rat and they'll die in 30 days. Deep sleep, they'll die in 60. It's half the time. REM sleep is that important. That's the time where your brain is literally healing. And so in 1984, when they were talking about how everybody keeps losing their memory, they couldn't remember if it was Oceania they were at war with or this. It's because none of them are getting their REM sleep. There's the alcohol and all of the drugs that they were on. And so, again, a downstream consequence of not doing a thing, I didn't understand how it would later benefit. And all the time, I feel, especially for young people, that's something that you've described this entire podcast is just you do something or something happens to you. And it's not till later in hindsight that you're going, oh, that happened to be a good thing. Like, what mean the weight loss journey and then doing the doctors, getting 3 strikes. You're like, these things happened to me. And then downstream, I ended up finding value in it.
Well, something that's hitting me though, too, is that like for my own personal journey, I still struggle with this, like, to this day. I'm saying that like I'm so old, but like the prospect of like trying to have sort of expectations that you have for yourself, you want to project that onto other people. And a part of you is like, well, I mean, if it works for me, it might work for you, right? And because you're like, I don't know, might help you or something, right? Assuming that this person wants your help is actually one of the worst mistakes. But I think that what's been an interesting kind of takeaway from this for me is that like when you have it upon yourself where you're like, well, hold on, like how do I just make sure that like I'm not waking up feeling hungover because it sucks, or like take it on yourself to just lead by example to do what it is that you feel is going to help with your journey, then whether or not somebody is or is not inspired to take it upon themselves is kind of out of your hands. Like, it really is. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that there isn't effort, because even why would we be hosting podcasts in the first place if we didn't care about what other people choose to do with the information? It's like, well, we want to give it to them for a reason. It's just that's up to them whether or not they're going to listen. It was funny. We were talking with a dude that randomly, actually, funny enough, your story about if I just sat on a plane and asked someone a random question, they think I'm a psychopath. Well, this actually kind of happened to me and Maddie. So we were on a walk and this guy was going on a run or something and he's shirtless, and like me, Maddie, and our sister-in-law, so like 3 young women, whatever. And then he like comes up to us and he asked for directions for somewhere, and we're like, oh, okay. And that was clearly an inn. I was like, okay, so you just got an inn to be able to talk to us, all right? And then afterwards he's like, so what do you feel is like what makes a good person? Like, how do you feel about health? And then he just starts asking us basically like podcasty questions. I'm like, what the fuck? And then like but the whole time, like, he walked with us for a fucking hour. He took up the whole walk. Like, this is the most spontaneous thing that ever happened to us. And I was like, what is going on? But because me and Maddie are so open, we're just like, okay, sure, we'll go along with it. Meanwhile, the whole time our sister-in-law is just like sus as fuck. But like, we love her for it. We love her for it because me and Maddie are kind of the type where we'll be like, yeah, okay, we'll play the game. And then she's just in the background going like, I'm gonna fucking watch this guy like a hog. Like, I don't know what's going on. And then, but it was so weird because like trailing it to it is we were like, hey, like, do you want to go on our podcast then? Because like he clearly, I asked him like, so do you randomly just approach everyone like this, or like what's going on here? And he was just like, well, I feel like I have information to like give to people because I've done lots of research, and so I just want to talk to young people, see if they're thinking about this stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. So you're doing like some weird influencer shit, but without a camera. I get it. Okay. Because I literally was looking for the mic when he came up to us. I was like, where is it? Are we recording something? And then he's like, though he said, I don't want to go on a podcast though because I need to remain anonymous. And I was like, first of all, red flag. But also I was like, well, why? And he said, because I'm very selective about who I give my information to, because not everybody's worthy of, receiving information. I thought to myself,
Dude,
I'm like,
turn and run.
dude, I thought to myself, I'm like, when you're sharing your thoughts and your information and all of that, I'm like, first of all, get over yourself. Like as in, oh, not everyone's worthy of the information that I've, you're not God, get out of here. But at the same time, at the same time, I'm like, people who already have that value and that inclination to want to learn, if you fucking open your mouth, they will listen. It's like reverse correlate all the people that don't listen to your podcast. It's because they don't give a shit. So they're not worthy because they just don't fucking listen. But all the people that do listen, you're like, great. Like, I don't need to be like, oh, well, you were the selected one. It's like, that makes no sense.
That's where that last line, I need to know who's worthy. I mean, you are at a fork in, you listening to him. You are standing at a fork in the road of do we keep talking to this? I'm guessing relatively attractive guy. Do we have him on as a podcast? Or there's are you getting in on the ground floor of a cult? You have to be very honest about well, what do I want? Maybe fuck this whole podcast game. I'll go be part of a harem in the mountains. I don't know. But by the time you say who's worthy of it, you can say it would be normal. You would have to accept that as an answer if you were talking to someone who their words truly are. Like a Michael Jordan, best ever played basketball. Tom Brady, best ever. Or you're talking to a Warren Buffett or an Elon Musk or whatever. Those are people where you're like, this guy's like, well, are you worthy of my time? Like, okay, that is at the very base level. Here's somebody that has shown they can make billions of dollars. They've got they've got it. If it's just a random person of who's worthy of my time, dude, that is
right.
Almost exclusively nothing good comes from.
Oh yeah, you're talking left hemisphere obsession for sure, because there's no community sense of grace and humility. It's a classic line that I always remembered from the Bible where because when I look at the grifters, even in the religious fields, and they sit back and they're making big money on the message of Jesus, and I sit back and I go, you're forgetting one of the most fundamental statements that he made: freely you have received, so therefore freely one should give. It's you're reading other people's mail if you're a Christian. So the bottom line is that if Jesus is a name you're comfortable with, or the universe is doing a thing, you are in a symbiotic relationship in pursuit of that thing. And you didn't come up with the original concept ever. So show a little grace, show a little humility, let your conviction stand on why you would like to share the information. But when it comes to who is worthy or who is not, that would be like sitting back looking at JC and going, I'd like you to specifically withhold your grace and your decision from this particular person because they don't suit my particular mindset, don't find your information that you gave me freely is not worthy of someone else. Yeah, my red flags would have been up with that dude right tight.
Yeah, well, Tommy said it at the very beginning of the podcast. He's like, one thing that I stopped doing is looking at people and just casting these judgments. He's like, I understand now certain people, they struggle with different things, different timelines, and they got different ways of pursuing and reacting. And that's something that a lot of people have to learn, is when to not cast the judgment. You're allowed to have the judgment. It's what leads to discernment. So you're absolutely entitled to have it, but that doesn't mean that you're right. The judgment could be preemptive, so you still need more information. But then two, what it leads to is, who are you to just assume that the judgment's correct and then cast it upon this person? So regardless of the person you deem worthy or not worthy of receiving the knowledge, are they in a place where they want to receive it? But I love that line of freely I've given, therefore freely you will give. It's I think it was it Sean Newman who said, when people, I don't know, it was Tom Luongo, and he was talking about not taking credit for things. He's like, look, if people gave me the idea, I'm just going to give it back, or I'm going to tell them that it came from this person so they can go to source and get it for themselves. It's not about what, I found the secret knowledge, the hidden knowledge. I am the Oracle of Delphi. I am the books of Sibylline. I am the Bible. It's no, no. And that's really good humility. That is a good compassion thing. And I think that's also, again, why, Tommy, you resonate with so many people is because of that openness. And that's a skill that I know I personally have had to learn. It is a skill to have humility. And I didn't always, because, you know, being young and having the hubris, I learn about things and then I go, oh, well, if this is an ingredient that's bad for you, nobody should be eating it. And then when somebody eats it, I'm like, just want to strangle you. It's like they're not there yet. They haven't made the decision, and it's not for me to decide for them. So
Madison fits that remark about, I want to treat him like a glow stick. Snap him, shake him until the light comes on.
And then how certain are you that the thing that you in your heart know is correct? Because you can go through the stages of like, I know this is right and everyone has to do it. And then you're like, well, I know this is right, but they're not there yet. You have to accept that, like, you might go even further down the road and be like, oh, that was not right. Holy shit. Oh, fuck. Like, you know, that was not right at all.
So what are you drinking?
Water.
I was curious because you have a buy me a coffee, and so do we, but we don't drink coffee. We drink matcha. So I was wondering, I'm like, are you a coffee drinker?
No, I don't. That's a way to give money. I like caffeine, but no, I don't know. I drink a ton of water, like more than anyone I know.
Perfect. That's good to know. Because we showed somebody the video that you were doing, that ad, and you were showing off, you know, your lovely physique, and they were like, he's got to be dehydrated. He's got to be.
Yeah, I'm the most hydrated. My mom said since I was a baby. Like that's like I've like always. That's like one criticism that's like remained over the ages. Like different friend groups, different periods of life. It's always like, what? Why are you drinking so much? Like, I'm like, I don't know. The thing is like
autism. I'm just kidding.
No, I'm retarded. I will still, like, even now, like everyone's like, in the middle of the show, I'll take a sip and I'll be like, fuck, that's good. Like it's the first time I've ever had bacon. I don't know. I love water. I don't know. I have no idea. Like I don't know what health benefits there are or lack thereof. Like,
all right, so we don't know where you're at for your timeline, but we want to make sure that
I got nothing doing.
Okay, great. So we want to talk about. I got something that I would like to see where you land on convictions. Somewhere along the way, because you have the series of guests that you have on, and they end up inputting information into your life, because you seem to come across where you operate in good faith. So you're going to take people at face value for what it is that they have to offer, and you let them speak, because you usually have your standard kind of like 2 rules. Don't incite violence, and we're not talking about other guests when you come upon my show. So that's a little structure there, and then they start presenting their information. But I know that you don't agree with everybody's opinion that has landed on your show. Somewhere you also have your own filter. There is a structure for you and how you feel and look at the world. And one of the things that I'd watched that had recently, I'm saying in real time because I'm taking in the context of watching your show like for a long time and sharing it. But you'd recently, in one of your episodes with a guest, had talked about your axiom on how you understood China changed. And that means, because I remember when you had a conviction about how you communicated your point of view about that, and then somewhere along the lines you changed your mind. As far as like, we know that it's a complicated entity and there's no like one slap China's this thing within the box. And the reason why I'm just bringing up this specifically is that for us here in Alberta and in Canada, we have what we would consider to be like an ongoing psyop that is trying to choose our enemy for us. And we don't particularly take to that in this household. We don't like it when the government or psyops or intelligence agencies choose our enemy for us. And so at one point, you had looked at the propaganda of China, but it would appear that you actually, fell for a lot of that same psyop material that comes through. But you recently have openly talked about where you've changed your mind on this. So could you explain or like help me come through your process of how that happened?
Yeah, well, again, kind of humility, and that applies to everything. Like you're playing the video game with the sniper rifle, or scale it up to a multipolar nation state. Like it's all the same. You're going in your own good faith. You have to start looking at it and be like, well, they said Korea was the enemy, and then they said Vietnam was the enemy, and they said Iraq was the enemy. At a certain point, you have to be like, that's not true. But then there's also the whole, no part of me thinks that, like, I don't think we should be involved in choose Ukraine or Gaza or Taiwan, whatever, pick your poison, or, in Mexico. I don't necessarily think we need to, draft every young man to go, sacrifice, blood on foreign soil. You can also at the same time be like, and I'm not naive to think that like they're teddy bears. I can look at them and be like, yeah, if they could run the world, they would. So I try to not like go fully in like, oh, we're one race, the human race. Like, yeah, dude, they'll skull fuck you and kill your family. Like, which is just the history of mankind. It's just what it is. In terms of just viewing that differently, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but I view that truly no differently than I view like personal experience with weight loss. To me, it's all the same. Is like what my honest take on things and like what the flow is naturally, and my own experience of that feels better than that. I apply it all equally. A new diet, a new exercise, or is like China going to replace the U.S. as the global hegemon? I look at that all legitimately like, as the same thing. Because as you kind of the road analogy, as you get on smoother and smoother roads, you just start to acknowledge them as smooth or not. You don't care what state you're in. If it's an 8-lane highway or if it's a driveway, you're like, this feels like a very smooth ride. And I think that's just being honest with yourself. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
where do you where would you like to find yourself? There's a value structure that's there, even if it's not being described in a hierarchical manner. So I'm just curious as to like what your foundation is. There a family dynamic? I know that you went from you grew in your faith factor, so there was a series of somethings that X put that I guess that's what I'm kind of inquiring about, is that somewhere inside beats the conviction. We would consider it a right hemisphere ping when we do, because if you even look at our logo, like the brain work and things like with Dr. Ian McGilchrist's work of Master and His Emissary and the Matter of Things, one of the themes for the family is know what you are so you can better negotiate who you are. Because the minute you enter into conversation, you are now working with verbal fusion. And you have no idea at all times what's going to happen when the two voices and the two minds collide. And so this is also reflected just even in your own mind, like how the left hemisphere perceives the world and how the right hemisphere perceives the world. And that people at times they look at the corpus callosum and they believe that it's a facilitator. And in all actuality, it has been scientifically demonstrated that it's more an inhibitor. So you end up with sort of a tale of two Tommies, a tale of two Mikes, a tale of two, right, and fill in whoever. And so the best version of yourself is usually the consciousness that arises from both hemispheres working in the best version with them each other. And then that can be taken out over time. So I guess what I'm curious about is that foundation for you, where your convictions changed and caused you to go, well, it's because what you do for your physique, that's still the consequence of that is still more you and solely you. But when you choose to change an axiom verbally on your show and you're communicating it, that's the thing where you'll get responses where people have said to you, thank you, Tommy, for what you've done, because the information that you shared or the guest that you had on put me in a position to help give information to a family member or a friend, and then they made a decision to like not pump themselves with a bioweapon material, so forth. This is just one of many examples. Even when you talk about ARC, remind me, it's the Association for the Recovery of Children. There is a conviction that rises up there, because now this isn't just as simple as you had forementioned, how you would look at your physical dynamic or the road. This ripple effect, you've thrown a pebble into the world, and now there's actually a ripple effect that is rocking boats or helping with smoother sailing. What arises in you from that?
Because between like the China thing saying you've changed my mind on this, and that's no small thing.
No, it's
because
not.
of how many people, especially here in Canada, it's a threat is how they perceive it. It's this life ending because they can control our government and end all life as it is because of their technology and their advancements. So for you to, look at, I think it was Ian Burlingame that you said helped you change your axioms a bit on China. And then same thing, you were on a podcast with, it might have been Matthew Eyre, and you were like, oh, game theory, that's not necessarily.
Yeah, like your zero sum that you just repeated.
Yeah, zero
you were
sum.
like,
He was
wait a
like,
minute.
that's not actually, and he like talked about it. And I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, both of those aha moments.
To me, even that just comes down to like being very honest with yourself. And again, it's like honesty is a good virtue, but to me, it's also just like the smooth ride. It's just subjectively, it's less rocky. And that's the only way I can describe it. Like going to bed early. It's the road gets smoother and smoother and smoother. So there are certain things you can take out. You're like, okay, well, I'm not gonna go to med school. Okay, that was a part of me that was lying to myself. And you're like, okay, I'm gonna stop drinking and gaining weight. Okay, and then you're like, I'm gonna do the podcast. And I'm just gonna enjoy it. Okay, and then as it goes on, you're like, I'm not gonna drink anymore. Okay, and then I'm not gonna smoke anymore. Okay. And you do that and you're like, well, I might as well lose weight. Okay. And you kind of keep going down this like narrow thing where you're more and more sensitive to quieter and quieter things, where it's like, really only out in like the middle of intergalactic space they truly, like, even gravity will affect you at that point, where there's no other effectors and it's just that one tiny little thing. You're like, oh, there it is. It's what is that noise? We turn off everything, take your earpods out, and turn off the air conditioner. Like, what the fuck is that? And you eventually go and find whatever it is, something's chirping, your fire alarm, or I'm in downtown. You're like, oh, that's outside. You have to get quieter and quieter and quieter. Like even like this year in 2026, just being like, man, if I just don't get on Twitter for a couple days, I start to just really, I'm like, yeah, I go look out and like every day I'm like, God, like the sky is so like beautiful. It is so like unfathomably beautiful. And it's like, you look at that, you're like, yeah, well, this is the sky. You're like, what's wrong with Twitter? It's fun. You shit talking, posting racist memes, and you're like, yeah, that's fun. To answer is like, the more and more, it's an eternal thing. So as you take out these things that make you the road less smooth, whatever the dishonesty thing is, I'm gonna abstain from saying this word and then the guardrails, or I'm gonna abstain from doing X, Y, and Z. As you just abstain more and more from these things, and maybe not abstinence, because I don't even necessarily think it's that. As you just, through your own personal experience of just first principles, doing things that are more and more peaceful, and I guess peaceful could be described as, it's like the lack of wobbling, or the lack of, you feel it in your chest, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. It just gets quieter and quieter, and it's subjectively enjoyable, and it gets more and more peaceful. And I think like the ARC thing to me was just like the next iteration of COVID. It's like, so here's this tool I have, it's a podcast and X people watch it. I happen to get in touch with this guy that runs this, and I happen to have some people that watch my show that are wealthy. And it's like, well, it costs me almost nothing, whatever the cost of a text is, to be like, hey, would you guys be interested in this thing? This is like an objective good. And then these guys are like, yeah, I mean, we could make that happen. And you put those together and you're like, oh, that's something that I imagine if I didn't do, at some point it would probably start arising in the back of my mind. Like, are you doing everything you could have done? Like,
right, the conviction.
No, yeah, I don't. And then it's, from my childhood, nuclear family, grandparents, holidays, Christmas, never took the bomb drove us to school every day, like parents that taught you the right thing, they're never divorced. I just had such like an inexplicably like beautiful childhood that the whole ARC thing, it's actually the opposite. It's because I don't know any of that. That is pain that I can't wrap my head around. I'm 35 and I like still have a beautiful family. And I think for me, it's like, it cost me nothing. It's fallen on my lap. put the two and two things together and something good can happen.
It's almost like it's like emergent. I'm kind of getting the sensation from his, because I'm also wanting to come to a better understanding of who you are, because we really do admire
I don't
you.
know who I am.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Like I'll take the version of that's you at this point in the journey, because that's all you could offer me anyway. Just like, this is what we offer you, is just ourselves. I get the sensation of you've been taking pieces off of the sculpture, and there's like the sculpture of David is emerging out of it, but you didn't go out to get David,
Correct.
Right? And you're very much at peace and very happy that something beautiful is coming out of the thing, even though you didn't know specifically what the thing was that you were looking to attain, but you did know that it was in the block, and so you had to begin doing that. Is that a good metaphor to that I feel like I'm landing the plane?
Yes, it's to know that it can exist,
right?
And you don't know what it's going to look like or how you're going to get there, but it just it's this thing that's unfolding. And I was talking to my buddy David Gosson the other week, and I was like, the baseline of humanity actually, relatively, all atrocity and war and I get all the life is struggling, but the basic, we talk about like we got to get kids off like Netflix or Twitter, or I don't know, I don't have a kid, but like the baseline is like if you're on those, you kind of slowly just get angrier, you're more pissed off, or you're more agitated. And it's like when I remove Twitter or Facebook from my phone, I don't then put in like positive news app. It's like no, just removing those and then letting a couple days cycle. The baseline is when there is no internet, you'd be like, oh wow, that's look at the morning sunrise. You're like, oh, when there is no exogenous like alcohol to get fucked up, it's not like, well, I'm going to take the other thing that makes me feel good. Like as that slowly leaves your system over weeks and months and whatever long-term effects there are, your baseline is you're just a little more, I don't know, like in the groove. And so you're like, so the state of not doing anything, relatively, is this sort of peaceful quiet. Well, then that's the state of reality, right? It's get rid of all humans, and like there's all the shows like Afterlife, where it's like you take this many years for buildings to collapse, and then this many years for highways to collapse, and the long enough timeline, it's like the entire Earth. It's like humans were never here. And it's like, well, that's the natural state. This isn't some like against humanity thing, not that at all. That's the natural state. And so if you start to go eating till eating and knowing that I have enough, and not eating because it just tastes good, going to sleep when I know I should just go to sleep early, and like telling the truth because it's the right thing to do and you feel better, that you start to get in harmony with reality itself. And if reality itself, if that state is sort of a harmony and peace and love, it doesn't matter whether or not you believe in God. I do believe in God, but even if you didn't, you would still say the base state is this natural flowing thing. Even the most beautiful garden in the world, like let it be grown over on a long enough timeline, it will look better than the original garden. It'll be like deer prancing around, like a waterfall. You're like, no one could have designed that. And I guess that's what I'm feeling more and more is like I'm trying to move towards and that's the statue at the center of the marble block. And once you accept that, instead of going, I want to make the statue of David, or I want to make a butterfly, you go, I just want to create something that is incredible. Once you release all preconceived notions and assumptions, then you are free to, whatever. You create this and you're like, there it is. Versus it has to be this and it has to be that and it has to be this. Like, no. Like, let all that go. Like, what do you really want? You feel it. You see it.
Writing your orchestra and you're letting it come out.
You're experiencing it firsthand. It's not like a take a leap of faith. You're like, I'm seeing it. Oh, let's keep going. And I don't know, and I guess that's the core of whatever the fuck you're supposed to reach. I don't know where I was going.
Well,
I get the metaphor.
What's interesting
I get it.
is like you listening to you talk. I'm like, you just described non-zero sum thinking. That's exactly
I know, right?
Yeah, I know. So, but like, I'm like,
Antithesis.
that's so funny though, because I'm like, oh, so you were like, I'm not going to necessarily do the podcast just for like the materialistic things and the like money and just, ego, like you were describing, right? But you were like, I want peace. And I'm like, that's funny, because it's like, that's a way of thinking that's out there, right? And so then when you were like, oh, okay, like maybe even in regards to the China thing, or just any country, you're like, well, like they'll skull crush you if they could get the chance, right? But at the same time, it's like, that's one part of our disposition, and the other part, hence like
is the fact that China's greening deserts,
is the fact that it was a quote that was done by like Doomberg or something. It was like, no, you're not poor.
Nobody's rich.
Nobody's poor if your true friends are rich.
Richer, yeah.
But like true friends get richer, right? But it also then that goes into like asking yourself the question of like, well, what does like richer look like, right? And then that's when you're like, oh shit, like the relationships we build because we have good rapport, right? Then that's truly being rich, because like someone likes you enough to want to check on you. Like, that's a gift.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fucking gift. And so when they do, then like, hey, how are you doing? And then like mentally they can help you out, or physically they're like, hey, do you want help with this task? And there's something that's civilizational building shit right there, because they're like, oh, I'll help you build that bridge, dude, and we'll cross it together. And that's like, oh, that's so cool. And so that's a part of our disposition. The other part is obviously, let's blow up the bridge.
Right? Yeah, you stay on your side.
You stay on your side, and I'm gonna build a skyscraper, asshole. But like, but that's why I just thought it was funny, because even you said talking about like making the road smoother, and so that's interesting, because I was like, what about changing your mind on like China, for example? And I'm not even saying changing it as in like you went like pendulum swung the other way. It just like was a tiny little like of maybe it's not as what I thought it was before. What about that made your road smoother is what I'm curious, because when you talk about it made the road smoother, it's like, well, what's your version of that particular thing making it smoother? Was it more like because you described they are apt to, push an enemy on us, and that was your example. And so when you feel like an enemy is being pushed upon you by some other form or entity, is that rough road, right? So if anything, it's more getting more closer to your definition of what is a not smooth road in the context of your geopolitical understanding on a world scale as well.
Even there, I guess, I don't know how to say it. There's, I don't know, like the subconscious, like baggage, if you will. If I don't even know if that's the right term. Like I have like a daily to-do list. Most of it's like podcast, like affiliated. And by having that, if I'm, wired and anxious, and I'm like, well, I should be doing something, I can just like look at this and like, no, I made the thumbnail, uploaded Spotify, YouTube, the emails, but you go through all of it and you're like, oh, it's all there. And then I'm like, well, I can clear that from my mind then. It's bills are paid, blah, 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 blah. And when I remove all that subconscious clutter, okay, and there's less things for, I don't know, anxiety or negative thoughts to grab onto. But even the same way of like, the reason I go to the gym the first thing in the morning, or even not everyone goes to the gym, let's say like, taking the trash out, doing laundry, right? Something that like you have to do, and you want it done, like you want your clean clothes. To me, I look at it as like it can change based on how long you wait until you act on it. So like let's say I have to take the trash out today. It's like Sunday, it's Monday. I don't have an apartment building. I have a trash chute. I don't know, but like let's say I have to take the trash out, and I'm like, well, take it out right now. I'm like, well, I'll do the podcast first. Like, okay. And then after you're like, I'll make food first. And you're like, yeah, well, I'll answer my emails and I'm blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I'll do all this and I'll do it tomorrow. And then maybe I'll do it the next day. Well, I'll push it back. Each time you're like thinking about it, even though as small as it is, it's just the nudge of like, oh, I have to go do this, which isn't the end of the world. It's not like it's some crazy burden, but it is a nudge with a value of discomfort. You can call that discomfort. And sometimes the discomfort is like, I need to get sober, or like I need to, X, Y, and Z. But so if I have the thought, for me, it's going to the gym. I wake up and I'm like, within like 30 minutes, I'm in the gym. And it's like, I know I'm going to do this. I've been doing it for 25 years. I know when I take a couple days off, I don't feel good. I took a couple years off and felt awful. I know I'm more awake. I'm happier, blah, blah, blah. So I know it's a thing I am doing. It's just, I'm going to do it. The longer throughout the day, I'm like, well, I'll do it then. All right. So we wake up and you think about it. You go, I'll do it next hour. So there's one little unit of pain. You go, well, I'll do it after this thing. Well, there's a second little unit of pain. I'll do it after X, Y, and Z. And it's in the back of your mind, You might build up 10 units of pain, and then you finally go, okay, I'll go to the gym. Then you go to the gym, and that's 1 unit of pain. That 1 unit costs you 11 units. Versus I wake up and I go, I have to go to the gym, and I go, all right. And I'll just start walking, and I'll be like walking, and I'll almost be like angry at my legs. Like, I'm like, don't take me to the fucking gym. And I'm like, just do it. Just shut up. And I'm like, maybe I should check Snapchat. I'm like, no. Go to the gym. I'm like, well, maybe I should, someone used to do these. Now you live by yourself, shop faggot. Like, I'm like, oh my God. And like, you go to the gym and you do it and you feel better. And now that costs you 1 unit of pain instead of 11. So how does that tie into something like I don't know, like China or ARC or COVID censorship? To me, there's just like a little kind of splinter in your brain. And it can be as little as, I should go take the trash out, or am I doing everything I should be doing with the tools around me? Like, I don't know. I can't build a house. Like, I'm not going to lie to myself and be like, well, I should be in Africa building houses. Like, what the fuck do I know? But if it's like, man, this requires almost no effort to take these wealthy people and put them in touch with this group of guys, and it's a tax write-off, and they rescue kids, you're like, I should probably do that. And that had been in my brain for like a couple years, where I was like, maybe I should have Baz on once a month to talk about it. And then I was like, maybe every once in a while I should promote it. And I was like, well, maybe I should start just putting it in every video. To like, why don't I'll ask the wealthy people, and if they say no, then they immediately they're like, yeah, that's good. And I'm like, oh. And even that little tiny thing of just like, should I be doing this? Even that little tiny unit, I'm like, oh, and that's just one more. It's just, that's not there anymore. And so it can be more in your face of like, if I cover these topics with these doctors about COVID, I'm going to be banned from this, and that's going to directly impact the growth. That's like a big, you're like, fuck. Okay. That's a huge splinter. But other stuff is just like, yeah, you should be doing this. And to me, it's like, and when you do that, it just gets quieter and quieter on the inside. And some stuff is pretty trivial, like putting dishes away. Some stuff is bigger like that. But that's what I found.
You get good at killing the little dragons, you get really efficient at killing the big ones.
No, we talked about that earlier. Yeah, like that snowballing effect, where it's like it'll transform into something if you don't tackle it now. And even the China thing you alluded to, I don't want to go to war in some foreign country. And it's funny because when people think about, oh, China bad, you don't know where that idea leads. China technocracy, China foreign interference, China, and then suddenly the solution is go to war with them. And, it sounds extreme.
Some dude's just like, oh, I'm going to make so much money off the boots that I'm going to sell.
Right? But whereas the pleb that's just thinking about, oh, the enemy, you don't think that that's where they're going to go, and then suddenly you're there. It's like in the book Ordinary Men, you take good men that are suddenly now, by the end of the story, shooting pregnant women. And you think that's an extreme, but it just takes one little nudge. As you're saying, that tiny dragon, enough time goes by, and it's a very large dragon, and they do that on purpose. There's intentional plans where you can start with something small. And even facing what we are here in Alberta, I mean, in the very beginning, you just watch how Alberta didn't necessarily sign up to be a part of Canada. They kind of just brought us in there. I just found out the first book written about independence was in 1911. Alberta was founded in 1905, and it was by a Liberal, and they wanted independent resources. And here we are in 2026 and we're still fighting for the same thing. So it's like, we just want to negotiate for a little thing. You know, it's just a little thing that we want. But then you don't understand time will happen if you don't put your intentions, if you don't kill the dragon, it will get bigger. And other people will feed the dragon what they want to feed it to make it bigger. So that's a very big takeaway to understand the snowball rolling. So those little things that you don't think about, the subconscious acts and ways that you look at the world. So if you don't want to go to war with China, is it a good idea to keep calling them the bad guy? Because somebody else might think that's the solution you're thinking of because they don't know your brain. You don't know where it's going to lead, and that's for the positive things, hence like not knowing the value, the statue of David, where it's going to end up. You don't necessarily know that that's the end. Well, that goes for a positive endeavor also, hence the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So
I really want to emphasize what you're saying though, because I really like it, and it is like, what you're saying in terms of your messaging of, China's the enemy, right? For example, your mode of attention, if you can't define what the action is behind that statement of like, okay, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to go to war with them? Oh, you're not? Then what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what is your action behind what you're saying?
Right.
I think that's such a good emphasis because the oligarchs are like, the action is for you to go to war.
Somebody has
like,
an action.
Fuck no.
Yeah. Somebody's got an intention.
Because like, even it was funny, Dad was talking to some of the men that we know in like the freedom community, and he was just like, you do know that when you're spouting off that China's the enemy and all that, right? You're not the ones that are going to get sent to war. It's going to be your grandchildren. It's going to be your children. It's like, do you want that for them? And then they all of a sudden they're like, well, I don't know. It's like, well, because you're not the one fighting, bitch. Like, what the hell? And so that's a really good point to make.
So yeah, it's like you see somebody like, well, my new stock pick is this, and I'm telling you guys that, you're like, when has anyone in your life ever, other than like your grandma, gone out of their way with the intention to give you money for the sole reason of giving you money? Grandma gives you $5 and there's no strings attached. Grandma's giving you $5 and it's a wink.
Yeah.
At what point in your
Don't
life
tell your brother.
has anyone ever offered you something and there have not been a hook? And it's like, oh, like, why are they bringing this up about?
Right.
And then you're also like, it's like when I find myself like, yeah, again, criticizing other governments and other countries. And you have somebody like, well, the CIA is doing this. And I'm like, did I do a podcast in Maine? Like, I don't have control over the CIA. I don't even know what they're doing. It's classified. And even if it wasn't classified, what am I going to do? If they're knocking over foreign governments and penetrating their intelligence agencies, what in God's name am I going to do? Well, then the inverse is true. If they're like, well, China's doing this. And I'm like, well, if the CIA is worried about China, they at least have a fighting chance. What am I going to do? And that you have to be careful to not go and like, oh, well, it's all fucked, black veil doom, because that's also a very easy route. And that's the path of least resistance. There's a reason why people do that. It's because it's easy. It's easy in the sense that when people go, well, blackpilling isn't enjoyable. No, actually it is. And the same idea that like today I could shut down the podcast. You'd be like, well, why would you do that? You've put so much into it. Well, because the uncertainty is finally gone. I can go, I know it won't succeed because I've destroyed it.
Because I've deemed it so.
Yes, and there's peace in that certainty of going, well, I no longer have to.
Right.
The real fear is like, if you keep doing it and you're like, well, it might work. It might work. That is unenjoyable of like, I don't know if it's going to work. And so it's very easy to give into a certain way and go, well, this is just the way it is, versus like, well, why am I thinking this? And then it's also like one thing I realized on the show over the years is, and I've also realized it with dieting and I realized it with saving money and working out, is like, there's no big day. And that if you're working out, I don't know, once a year, you might decide to go twice as long at the gym. Cool, great. On a graph, you at 200%, which you normally do. But over the course of a year, I'd much rather take 365 regular workouts than that one day that was actually worth 2 days.
Right.
It's not even that it's kind of close. It's laughably not close.
Right.
Yeah.
I've had on big guests on the show. Even when they do perform well, when I go, that is a big episode. If a normal episode, let's say, gets 100 views and that one gets 1,000, that's 10 times. That ain't nothing. Yeah, but over the course of the year, I can do 365 normal episodes to the point where even the most humdrum episodes, it's not that it's slightly more than the big episode, the big guest. It's incomparable. You can have a big day, like, why I only ate this many calories that day. Versus, like, if you just kind of stick with it for months, you won't even be able to, like, register that one day. Or building muscle, or again, doing the podcast. There's no, what's growing the podcast? Just consistently doing shows.
Yes, the grind.
And so,
yeah.
Well, so I look at all that and I go, well, that's what I know in my life is what yields results. So I also have to go, regardless of my thoughts on let's nuke China or China's our best friend or anything in between. The reality is I've probably left much more of an impact on this earth by, let's say, 2 people were able to avoid a vaccine injury.
Right.
Those 2 people, that's probably 2 more than I was ever going to affect protesting a war with China or encouraging a war with China. If I can help these guys raise money and they rescue 1 kid, that probably is going to be a bigger thing I've done on this earth than everything else combined. Would you like to donate $1 to Red Cross? Like, that one thing. And so
that's money laundering.
I don't look, yeah, exactly. So I don't look at it as like, because you do have to be careful about blackpilling of like, well, I have no control over this, and then you start going, well, I have no control over anything, and then you spiral. So I have to be like very honest. Like, let's say China is objectively, let's just say theoretically they are, or whoever, Russia or fucking whatever. I know in my immediate life, there's probably more I'm going to do by like bringing a pair of socks to a homeless shelter,
Right.
than dedicating my entire life towards some abstraction about the Indo-Pacific power projection.
Right.
Like, we should move carrier strike groups there. All right, I'm sure Trump's gonna ask Tommy. Hold on, before he moves 500,000 tons of war material and nuclear reactors and Marines trained to kill. Like, what's Tommy thinking? It's like, all right, like. Again, I kind of dissociate sometimes when I start talking.
No, that's good.
I didn't know whose question I was answering.
To take the overall arching theme, so we'll start to come to a wrap on this. I think that was one of the things that we had said even previously before the camera got rolling, that we wanted to honor you, and we are a downstream real life example. So even if you wanted to clip this, so you could be like, look, here is proof that a plebeian family has taken information from the Tommy podcast, and we have discerned it, disseminated it, listened to it as honest brokers, and we have tried to bring what we would consider the best right hemispheric perspective that we can, also understanding the left hemisphere approach to things. And our lives have been better because we've made that decision by taking our time to invest in the viewership of your program. And we are hoping that we find success so that we can do incremental donations to people like you, to Mike Ferris with Coffee and a Mike, to Sean Newman at the Sean Newman podcast, to Rich from Crypto Rich. Like, there are individuals such as yourself, Tommy, that are trying to be honest brokers of information in this world, and we want to see them honored because we believe that they should be. This is like, it's our perspective, it's our right. You know, people can be like, oh no, you don't need to do the thing, thank you. And it's like, no, but we want to. This is us trying to be stood and be counted for. That we are viewers and fans of your show, and we thank you for coming on to ours. And we want people that watch us and they like the earnestness of the Holmes family. And we do have a story, and you know, we can hold down an episode or two ourselves. But the thing is that we're grateful. We're grateful for your incremental progress. We're grateful that you have the conviction to find the vision within the stone. And even though there's rough edges on your way into the place, you are currently at work on your symphony, and we have really enjoyed listening to the rough sketches along the way. That's my 2 bits. Girls, have at her, but I just want to say thank you so much, endearingly.
Yeah, man,
Maddie,
thank you.
I have my little closing marks. But because I'm like, I don't know, when I listen to a guest talk, my brain goes like, ping, 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 and it's really hard to hone in because like I'm like a spider's web that way in my thought process. But what I was thinking of, it was I like the fact that you talked about like little mini pinging and like how it can go one of either way. It's like there can be a little nudge that can get you like so far gone that it's just not a good direction, and sometimes you're like, oh shit, like hindsight's 2020, I didn't even know what I was doing. But you can also have a little ping that can nudge you towards something that is good, like for the better. But I think that what you're demonstrating here today in this is that it's easier than you think if you just let yourself be able to be persuaded somewhere else, right? And so that it reminded me of like, you're not really married to like a new discomfort, right? It's like you're like, oh, okay, so this is probably something that I didn't know about either. Great. Like I guess we're gonna be here now. But it's more like you don't pendulum swing is what I'm feeling with you. It's like if you were one way and you get nudged a little bit, you don't automatically go like, well, now I'm gonna be a China apologist. Like, no, you're like, oh, okay, like now it's something else and it's a little bit closer to the middle. And then that's something that I think most people can probably learn from. And it's one of those things where even when you were describing like the different enemies that were coming up in the past, hindsight's 2020, like for everybody. And so when they look back now today, they could go like, the enemy clearly, like the fake enemy that they were giving us was Iraq, or the fake enemy was Russia, or the fake enemy, like back in the past, they said it was this, and we know today that it's not. But you're looking back, hindsight 2020. You assume that if you were that person in that time era, that you would have figured it out when you could barely even figure out a COVID scenario, or you could barely figure out 9/11. And then you think that, oh, well, if I was in that era, I totally would have seen it. It's the same thing with China. It's like, well, we're in this era and you think you can see it? Like, and it's the same thing with us. I think that's why, like, even when we do the research of like the Matthews and listen to the Colonels and the Ian Burlingames, we're like, oh, okay, shit, like I am a little bit more married towards the fact that it could be like this British Empire entity. But I think what we're coming down to is like, again, I don't really want to go to war against the British people, because you know that no accountable motherfucker is going to be like, well, I'll hold up my sword and I'll fight you. No. They'll be like, here's a person, human shield. And you're like, fuck, I'm killing somebody else that I don't need to kill. I'm like, I want to kill you, the person who feels like you can't, I don't know, stand in your own fucking shit and take the hit. It's like, you'd rather kill someone else to achieve your goal. And so like I think the takeaway for even the Albertan folks that are listening, because this is where our biggest message is that you got to come and keep it back to home and keep it close. And I love, like, Tommy, every time that you try to answer a question, and I say try to because I know that even you're like, I'm still trying to learn. Exactly. I'm just speaking your language, but you use a metaphor or an analogy back to just your own life and your own existence. And I think that that's really important because, again, the abstract thing, it's like, I think that the way we take it further, obviously, is I agree. You can't just take the approach that like death thinking, stasis thinking. Well, if I just, black pill and say nothing can change, then, I'm certain about the fact that if I destroy the podcast, it won't do well. So great, I can just destroy it and we're good to go. It's like, but there's going to be something else. You turn around and you're like, oh shit, another uncertainty that I'm going to have to face, right? And then you'll get to the point where, what are you going to do? Destroy everything to the point where you just kill yourself? Because that actually is a guaranteed certainty of, yeah, well, if you do it, all of the problems go away. But you think, right? Like, we don't know what the journey looks like afterwards. So even then, that's the most, like, it's a paradox. It's a paradox because it's so uncertain to us once we do it. But I was going to say that you also can't go the other way, which is, oh, everything's going to work out fine, because then that's just also another cop out. Then you're abdicating the responsibility of what does fine look like if I don't do something. Like, if I just say everything's going to work out fine, then I'll leave it in the hands of somebody else, right? When I could have been the one, going to the gym and pumping the weights. Like, I could have been the one hosting the podcast for other people to see and be inspired by, like, assuming somebody else is going to do your job for you. And then that just also makes it death thinking, because you assume you're not a unique person that can actually have an impact and a purpose in this world. And it's like, whoa, fuck. Like, it's just like, it's so stasis.
It's like, ironically, like, it is zero sum in like a contradictory way. And I remember having that thought in college where it dawned on me. I was like, I kind of feel like it's a seesaw. Like, when I start going one way, going to bed early, eating healthy, eating less, exercising, studying, meditating, reading, I just feel better and better. If I go the other way, I'm like, well, just drink a little bit. Just go get a couple hamburgers. I'd go one way or the. And to me, I was like, I guess that middle point is like nirvana, enlightenment, detachment, which maybe. But I've kind of found it in my life, like I'm sliding off one side of the hill or the other. So I'd rather slide down the one that feels better and I think helps people, and there's like more of a feeling of love. It's like you do slide that way.
If you're gonna fall, fall forward.
And then even that is like an acceptance of what's in front of me, because you could go like, well, I don't like that. There should be a middle path. And like, you're more than welcome to want there to be a middle path. You know, people are like, is it true that no pain, no gain in the gym? I'm like, I would love if the answer was like, no, just, it's like that meme in America, like, hey guys, the first rule of gun safety is have fun. Like, it's obviously it's not the fucking case at all. Right? That'd be like if I said like, hey, the first part of going to the gym is just, you know, make sure you're just having a good time. Like, no, it's actually, the more in pain you are, the better it is. Short of an injury,
right?
Short of an injury,
short of an injury.
True. You're sweating and you're hey, you're doing it well.
Yep.
I wish that wasn't the case. And you're free to wish that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
But it is the case. Yeah. Looking back at all these things, you go, oh, I thought this was the reality. And then I realized it was this, and then it was painful at first, and it felt better. And then I thought this was the reality, and it was painful at first, and it felt better. You're looking back over the years, you're like, all those bad things ended up being really good and liberating. And then you go, but this thing right in front of me, no, I know how it is, and I'm not doing the painful thing. And it's like, but you know, do this and you're gonna feel better. If that makes sense. It's
the painful thing, the last thing, I'm sorry, it's just when he goes, like, my brain goes to, but like the painful thing that you're talking about, like, oh, if you like, short of an injury, like, emphasis on that, but it applies though, I think, even to what you were talking about with the nihilism of like, if I just destroyed the podcast, right? It's like, but there's the pain and the uncertainty of I have to actually put in effort to make sure that this thing succeeds, right? And I have to put in pain and effort to make sure this thing succeeds, right? And then it makes me think of even Alberta's journey as we're trying to figure out, well, do we separate, do we not separate? If we achieve it, what does that look like? If we don't achieve it, what does that look like? The short answer is that there's going to be pain,
right?
And if there isn't, we're doing something wrong. Like, that's how I'm seeing it.
Short-term pain for long-term gain.
Oh my gosh, no.
Oh my gosh.
But basically, like, you do have to bring it back home. Like, we look at Ottawa and we're like, oh, they're the external threat and they're the problem. And like, for sure, like they are, but at the same time, it's like we have our own Ottawa in our heads. Like, that could be us. We could make that manifest in reality, even as we try to become a new country, because all of us have our own little mini oligarch inside of us. And if we don't understand how it is that we can get nudged, and we don't understand that about our disposition, then we're going to make the mistake of this positivity bias of like, oh, I'm going to the gym for fun. Like, I'm going to make a country for fun, and I'm going to know exactly what to do. And that's the fucking important story. And it's like, no, that's not it. So
MayCee, you alluded to bringing things home, and I think everybody, to bring things home, you should go to Tommy's homepage on YouTube. So this is where you can find him, on YouTube, Rumble, and then if you want to support him financially, because you are able, and that is what we would also like to do, you can find him on Patreon, Locals. My favorite, because everybody knows that we too have a Buy Me a Matcha, not coffee. He has a Buy Me a Coffee, so you can go and do a thing. Of course, he might turn that coffee into water instead.
I think they edited my goal, because it was like, what do you want coffee? And I think I said like I wanted. It was like right when Russia invaded Ukraine. I was like, I wanted like a mobile like, missile system, and then they emailed me and said that wasn't a goal.
That's hilarious. Those are places that you can support him. And then this is the ARC, Association for the Recovery of Children, that he's been alluding to. And I know there will be people here that have never watched your podcast. Once you start watching, every time he does his show, he has really good show notes in the description box, so you can find all the links and go to his other shows. But
let's say the last two things is it was December 2011 when my buddy sent me a podcast, and I was just like, I enjoy this because it was was unlike anything else. It oscillated between serious talks and like selling sex toys, and that was Joe Rogan.
The
His show was less
fleshlight.
than a year old.
Oh.
So I started listening to that early on. I was like, this guy's got it. And so I've kind of like going to the mRNA patent holder. I'm like, well, I've watched this guy go from that to that by just being honest. So I'm like, well, there's my marker of like, that's the way to go. But then lastly, it's the paradigm of like, you know, values and zero sum and good and bad. And so you could say, well, what about the argument that, you know, a foreign nation does want to steamroll you in this sum of organic life on this planet? You could look at that and go, okay, well, now you have to push back against that. One thing that helped me a lot was I started just the thought experiment of like, well, what if everything worked out? Just beyond your wildest dream. Like you live a full 100 years, kids and grandkids, and you're able to do meaningful work, philanthropic work. You're able to do your bucket list. You're able to, the guy you want to win for office wins every year. Let's just say it all just works out forever. You're still going. At the end of it, you're still going. You're gonna die. Well, super longevity, heat death of the universe, whatever you want. Like it does come to an end, and you have to look at that as the paradigm you exist in. It's like, well, what if doing all these things on your show and helping out the right people? Like, yeah, there is vested interest in like a lot of these things not being talked about. And so I think once you kind of let go of all of that, then no matter how perfect it works out, it still comes to an end. And I think that's what helps me go more towards the whole smooth road, whatever the fuck I was talking about earlier. Is like it's just you're not winning, and not in a dark or a pessimistic way. You can't take it with you. And I think that's what's helped me.
It's the most consistent factor that you can count on, and counting on consistency is what we've been talking about pretty much this whole podcast. The grind is consistency, killing the dragon early, paying attention to how the little things, because life goes on, like you're saying, and then life ends, and that's a consistent thing that you can absolutely rely upon. So rely upon consistency, and then yourself, if that is the way that the world works, to harmonize, as you said, or emulate the world. Try and emulate consistency. Be the most consistent person you can within your body, within your mind, and you will find you will get the closest to resonating with the state of the world that you can.
Yeah, and you'll want to have the resonating. You're going to want to find yourself where you're under inspiration for the things that can be out of love and for good. And if you're going to be facing the other, make sure you're falling to the side that you said you'd rather fall onto.
Yeah.
The thing that makes you feel more peace, go towards that.
Thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast. I hope you enjoyed it and would like to come back in the future.
Yeah, I hope we left a good taste in your mouth, Tommy.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. No, thank you for putting up with me. Yeah, yeah, no, it's you guys are in good company. Because like, trust me, as I said with the Zoom and microphones beforehand, and I still have legitimately no idea what I'm doing every single day, and it's kind of working out. So,
Awesome.
Yeah, so that's my advice to you guys. Just keep doing whatever it is you're doing, and then it will work out.
Well, then, without further ado, this has been another episode, everybody, of At Home with Holmes.